Politicians don't always have the best reputation in the world, do they? And I think sometimes that is a deserved reputation. Sometimes it's not. A lot of them work very hard, of course, and I'm not trying to be down on politicians, but certainly some of the things that they do make it very hard to trust them. One of the things is the way that they use words and language to try and make their own points rather than answering the question. I remember watching a thing a few weeks ago where Jeremy Corbyn, who is currently the Labour Party leader here in the UK, he was asked, I think, several times one question about, do you think the country would be better off under Brexit? And each time he sort of dodged the question and he didn't answer it. And that politicians are famous for doing that, dodging the question and answering a different question instead, a question that they want to answer. I don't know if you've ever seen that TV series, Yes, Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister then, Jim Hacker, he tells his one of his aides, Bernard, look, this is how you answer a question if you're asked by the media. First of all, you say, oh, that's an interesting question. Then you answer the question that you want to answer, not the question that they actually asked you. Now, we can use language to kind of build up ourselves and our own empire or whatever, or we can actually use language in a truthful and an honest way. And many people feel like politicians don't always use language in a truthful and honest way. And that's really what Jesus is talking about in our passage from the Sermon on the Mount today, is about how we use our language. Are we honest? Do we have integrity, or do we not? Now this is what Jesus said, and this is Matthew chapter 5 from verse 33, talking about oaths. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the oaths you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So what does Jesus mean here? I think this is where a little bit of context helps a bit. So he said, you've heard said to the people, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the oaths you have made. Don't break your oath, but fulfill the oaths you have made. Okay. Now, we've been thinking all the way through the Sermon on the Mount so far that what was happening was people at that time were trying to find ways out of the law, to get away from their obligations, rather than fulfilling what they were supposed to do. And that's what was going on with oaths as well. That people were saying, if you swear an oath by a certain thing, it is binding, but if you swear an oath by something else, it is not binding. And there were kind of different ways of getting out of oaths. So you could say to someone, oh yes, I swear by the altar in the temple that I will do this for you by tomorrow. And then tomorrow, if you haven't done it, and the person comes to you and says, well, why haven't you done it? You might say, oh, well, I didn't swear by the candles on the altar or whatever it was. That you could use words to try and weasel out of the thing that you were supposed to have promised to do. Now, of course, that wasn't the right thing to do, but that was one of the things that was going on in Jesus' day. People were taking oaths, but actually they were just trying to get out of their commitments rather than fulfill them. And that's why Jesus says, look, don't swear an oath at all. He says, don't swear by heaven, for it is God's throne. Don't swear by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. He says, look, all of these things belong to God. Whatever you swear an oath by, nothing is more kind of significant or important, as it were, than anything else, because it all belongs to God. And God watches over everything. Now, if you swear by the earth, or anything on earth, it's no more significant than swearing by heaven, because God is in heaven, but the earth is his footstool, so to speak. So God still cares and hears and notices whatever you swear by. And he says, do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. But don't even swear by yourself, because you can't control that. He says, look, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything else comes from the evil one. The evil one, I think it's interesting that Jesus refers back here, because of course in Genesis chapter 3 we read that the serpent deceived Adam and Eve with his words. You know, how did God make the world? He made the world by speaking. The serpent comes along and he speaks words of doubt, doubting God's words. So God's words are powerful and they are truthful. Jesus' words are powerful and they are truthful. But the serpent is the one who deceives. And that's where deception comes from, Jesus says. So what is Jesus commending us to do here? And what is Jesus saying we shouldn't do? I don't think Jesus means that we shouldn't ever take an oath, for example, in court. I don't think that that's the right application of what Jesus is saying here, because the oaths that were being made here were being used to try and avoid doing what was right. And I think taking an oath in court, I think that's an appropriate thing to do if you go into and testify in court. Rather, what I think Jesus is commending is a kind of integrity and an honesty of speech. We should just call a spade and say what we mean. We should always be loving and right in the things that we say. It's not about trying to get out of our obligations. You know, that if you don't intend to do something for somebody, then don't promise that you will do it. If you're going to do something for someone, just say that you will do it and then do it. You know, there's no need to make all these promises about it and then not do it and get out of it and say, oh, I never really promised to do it. But rather, we should have integrity in the things that we say. We should stand up for what we believe, and we should have integrity in the things that we say to other people and how we relate to them. I think if more politicians had that kind of integrity, I think we would trust them more. Now, I trust politicians who, when I know where they stand, a lot more than I do politicians who would say anything, I think, to be popular. Now, we have had politicians like that who I felt would just say anything if they thought it would make me like them and believe in them, rather than actually people who disagree with me sometimes and who I disagree with, but who have the integrity to stand and say, I believe this, that and the other, and these are the reasons why, and let's discuss it. But rather than just trying to say anything for popularity. So Jesus says we need to just be people who are simple in a sense in our words. We need to be truthful. We need to have integrity. We need to be honest. All of these things are commended by what Jesus says. I think that's especially important in an era of social media where it's very easy to kind of say things just for the sake of people liking you. Easy to say things just for the sake of fitting in with the crowd. You know, if you don't post up a certain picture or whatever on Facebook, then other people will think, oh, why aren't you doing that? Or you just do things to fit in and say things to fit in sometimes. Whereas actually Jesus says, look, be people who are through and through believe and speak in the same way. You know, that integrity of our beliefs, our actions, and people who say what is right all the time. James says this, not many of you should be teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants us to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. So the tongue, if we're able to control what we say, then James says it will actually control the rest of our lives in a sense. It's such a small thing, it seems, but it's such an important thing in our lives to actually control what we say, to say what is right, loving, kind, for our words to be in accordance with our actions, for us to be people of integrity who believe and say the same things. Now, I know that this is a high ideal. This is a high thing that Jesus is calling us to, that James says. And this is really the importance of forgiveness, and the importance, we haven't really thought much about that in the last few weeks. And it's important to remember that the Sermon on the Mount is in the context of Jesus dying for the very people who he condemns. And certainly I've said things in the past which I regret saying. I've said many things which have been wrong, many things which have been hurtful. But I can find forgiveness for those in Jesus Christ, and the power to live differently, the power to change the way that I speak, the pattern of speech, the hurtful and the harmful, the lack of integrity, the lack of honesty, and so on. I can find ways to change that in Jesus Christ. And that's really significant, that actually Jesus isn't holding up a standard for us to live to and not giving us the power to do it. He forgives the times when we fail, and he gives us the power to live in the strength, with the power of the Holy Spirit, to live the kind of life that he wants us to live, and to grow into that as we trust in him. Not just that we change overnight, but that we grow in the grace of God as we learn more of his word, as we understand more. We grow into what he wants us to be doing. So I hope that this has been helpful to you in thinking through what Jesus says about oaths and about speech. Please do have a look at the rest of my channel for other videos if this is your first time. This is part of a series. And please do subscribe, like the video and subscribe if you like this video. And I hope to see you again for another video very soon. Thank you very much for watching, and God bless.